Welcome to Grey Propaganda, where we discuss the lies, falsehoods, and politics of the mainstream media. As always, I will cut through the propaganda and summarize the news for you. Today, we have an article from MSNBC. Donald Trump gives Kamala Harris too much credit for supporting trans rights, by Katelyn Burns. They write, Harris led a California Attorney General office that fought a lawsuit seeking gender affirmation care for trans prisoners in the state. Now, first, I should mention Katelyn is a freelance journalist based in New England, and she was the first openly transgender Capitol Hill reporter in U.S. history. Now, Comrade Kamala has gone through a meandering journey on trans rights over the years, and in contrast with her history of unambiguous support for gay rights. Now, she wants to do a transgender operation on illegal aliens that are in prison. When Harris was confronted with the question, ensure that transgender and non-binary people who rely on state for medical care, including those in prison and immigration detention, will have access to comprehensive treatment associated with gender transition, including all necessary surgical care. Harris answered, it is important that transgender individuals who rely on the state for care receive the treatment they need, which includes access to treatment associated with gender transition. Now, Harris also led a California Attorney General office that fought a lawsuit seeking gender affirming care for trans prisoners in the state. What I believe Katelyn is trying to say in this article is that Kamala won't be a Bernie-level far-left crusader of trans rights, and she doesn't deserve your support or your vote if you're trans. However, make sure to go and vote anyway, because Orange Man bad. Now, let's dive into the video on this article before going into more.
Ali has devoted a lot of time on the show to opening up Project 2025 and making sure that you know exactly what's in it, what the right is planning for the next Republican presidency. Today, we're going to start with a very revealing passage from the very first page. Quote, look at America under the ruling and cultural elite today. Inflation is ravaging family budgets. Drug overdose deaths continue to escalate, and children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. Of all of the priorities that the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 might have, of all of the items on their conservative wish list, you might be surprised to see drag queens and so-called transgenderism and pornography singled out within the first few sentences of a nearly 1,000-page tome. If you are surprised to see that there, well, don't be. It falls right in line with their fixation on anything that might threaten the conservative image of what the American family should be. The authors of Project 2025 made the connection between pornography and transgender people in a calculated and cynical move to equate the two. Project 2025 aims to define anything related to sex, gender, or sexuality as pornography. Its goal is to paint the very idea of people who are not straight and cisgendered as obscene, dangerous, and ultimately illegal. A few pages later, the mandate reads, quote, pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children, for instance, is not a political Gordian knot inextricably binding up disparate claims about free speech, property rights, sexual liberation, and child welfare. It has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are child predators, misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug and as psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classified as registered sex offenders, and telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. To be clear, this means that if the architects of Project 2025 have their way, teachers and librarians who provide information about the existence of trans and queer people would be jailed. Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation go after so-called transgender ideology, which, rather than targeting specific topics or content that parents might object to, goes after the very existence of trans people. Their intention is to erase LGBTQ people, and the mandate literally calls for deleting any mention of LGBTQ people, any mention of reproductive health or healthcare, and any mention of diversity from all legislation. The foreword of the 900-page manifesto reads in part, quote, "This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender-sensitive abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, all of this out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists." Whew. So let's recap. Project 2025's authors want to classify anything outside of heteronormativity, any discussion of gender or sexuality, or even the existence of trans people as pornography. They want to imprison anyone who provides information related to sexuality and gender. They want any company or organization that publishes or even provides information related to sexuality and gender to be shut down. They literally call for the eradication of any mention of queer people, gender, sexuality, reproductive health, and anything related to diversity and inclusion. That is the conservative vision for America. They literally wrote it down. They made it overly long and very complicated to discourage us from reading it and understanding it. But make no mistake, if Donald Trump is elected, they will hold it up as a mandate to transform America into a dystopian chapter from a Margaret Atwood novel.
Now, there's a couple of points I want to focus on about this rant. She mentions conservatives want to classify this gender education as pornography. They do not want the employees of schools and libraries to be able to teach gender identity, equity, gender equality, DEI, and everything else mentioned in the video to children. Now, this wouldn't even have to be a plan if the left didn't want to teach children at schools and libraries about their sex as young as elementary school. The left wants to indoctrinate all children, even if their parents don't believe that is what is best for their kids, indoctrinate them into this gender education and gender identity politics, right? But the right wants everyone to have the choice to teach their kids about life-defining characteristics at home, where you're free to call yourself whatever you want and have all of your other personal freedoms. And I think that is the main distinction between the two. This wouldn't even have to be on the board if we didn't have this craziness in our school systems. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.